Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the life and letters of the Apostle Peter. We're in John chapter 6 today, at the end of John chapter 6. It's the longest chapter in John's Gospel, 71 verses. Of course, John didn't write chapters and verses, he just wrote his Gospel. The chapters and verses were added many centuries later. But anyway, we're in chapter 6, verses 66 through 71. Yesterday, we talked about Peter as one of the three, Peter, James, and John, who were allowed to be there to see Jairus' daughter raised from the dead. And we talked about that whole series of events that happened really one on top of the other over the course of a day or so. The stilling of the storm, the casting out of the demons from Legion, the healing of the woman with hemorrhaging, and the raising of Jairus' daughter, and how overwhelming that must have been, and how when Peter makes his statement of faith today, we know this is not an academic decision that he's made, that he's not been convinced of an argument. He's been converted to a man that he loves with all of his heart, soul, strength, and mind, a man whom he believes to be God's chosen Messiah. It's a sweet moment today. It's a sweet moment in that it is a moment in which Jesus himself is ministered to. In the Garden of Gethsemane, we're told in Luke's Gospel that an angel came to minister to Jesus, to comfort him. In a sense, Peter today gets to be that person to fill that role. John chapter 6, John's Gospel is so important because John knows, writing at the end of the first century, that we've already read Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And he's read Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John, as an eyewitness, knows what's already been said and what needs to be said yet. And so we get so many of these moments that we are richer for having, and insights. John names names. John gives us extra details. John tells us about things that we didn't know happened before. It's just John's Gospel is amazing, and he puts you in the moment, which he expects to do. He says that at the beginning of 1 John, I can give you the full experience I had with the words that I'm writing. And we surely have this today. John chapter 6, Jesus has fed the 5,000. The crowd, because they had been fed, decide they want Jesus to be king. Jesus, therefore, is in the difficult situation as he manages his ministry of not letting things get out of hand, happen too quickly, happen for the wrong reasons, happen in a way that God does not intend. So he sends the crowds away. He puts the disciples on a boat. He goes to the mountains to pray. This is followed by the episode where Jesus walks on the water. After this, when Jesus returns to his public ministry in the next few days, the crowds are all coming because they want another free meal. So Jesus begins to be intentionally more challenging in the way he teaches, using metaphors that we understand with 20/20 hindsight, but that would have been unbelievable to them, about eating his flesh and drinking his blood and things like that. And it becomes so difficult, and the people become so frustrated with Jesus for not fitting their categories that they grumble and they leave. A lot of them leave. It says in John chapter 6, verse 66, as a result of this, many of his disciples withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. And Jesus therefore said to the 12, you don't want to go away too, do you? And Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. There are two of these absolute confessions in John's Gospel. This is the first one. And then there's Martha of Bethany's in chapter 11, which goes a little further than this one does. But we always talk about Peter's confession in Matthew 16, which we're going to be talking about, shortly. But it's Peter's confession in John chapter 6, which is the absolute confession. But it's this moment, the thing that he says before. And Jesus, We know the hard work Jesus put into holding on to his apostles. He prays about it in John 17, you know, when he talks to God. I did what I needed to do. I took care of these guys. I didn't lose any of them except the one that was going to betray me. And so when Jesus says, you don't want to leave me too, do you? He's feeling this. And Peter says, where are we going to go? Whether we get this or not, where are we going to go? I mean, you are everything, and we know this. You have the words of eternal life. And he's stepping up and speaking for the whole group. And you may think that's presumptuous of him, a Peter kind of thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. We have believed. It's perfect tense. We believe now. We have believed. We're always going to believe. We know this, absolutely, that you are the Holy One of God. How important was this affirmation to Jesus? It's an emotional affirmation. It's a spiritual affirmation. It's an intellectual affirmation. It is a communication from the heart, soul, strength, and mind. We're not going anywhere. None of us are. We're not going anywhere. And Jesus' response afterwards that one of them was going to betray him, one of them was not sound, is a way of saying to Peter, that's true for 11 of you, but not for 12. But how important was that for Jesus to hear? This is the reason I love Peter. Of what he knows about himself and what he knows about Jesus. And when he messes up, none of that changes. You know, that's always true. Okay, thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes. And the next time that we are together, we are going to be, we're going to be talking about Peter, at the Mount of Transfiguration. Another time, he, with James and John, get to do something. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about Peter's confession in Matthew 16, and then the Mount of Transfiguration. Sorry for not consulting my notes quickly enough. We'll be in Matthew 16 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.